All right, we're live. Welcome to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I am your host, the Bad Light Gamer, with my co-host, Glue Boy,
Heyo, it's me.
the boy, Elmer Childs.
People do call me that for some
Yeah,
reason. Devin
and
calls me that.
we're back with a regular Table Talk for once, which
Yo,
it's only been like over a week. It's been 2 weeks, I guess.
I think this is kind of fitting, as this week is just the anticipation for going back to Pathfinder that we've both been itching to do for a long time.
It's true. I've at least got to play some Pathfinder though,
Yeah,
but
I have not.
it's been, yeah, that's true, and it's been kind of exciting because you guys are, I don't even remember what level we left off at, level 10ish.
I'm level 10, yes.
Yeah, which is really good. It's a level 10. First of all, level 10 itself is a really good level. You get your next ability boosts, and you're right on the cusp typically of like some big thing at level 11.
Yeah, and it's fun for me because I just got some really fun new feats for Wizard. Because like I get my class feat for overwhelming energy, which hell yeah, just ignore resistance to certain elemental damage, torrential backlash for my archetype, so I can like blast people in an emanation with my cursed energy, and then aberration lore, because there's reasons I'm doing that. I got all my lore skills.
And we'll be trying out Pathfinder in Foundry for the
God,
first
it's gonna
time.
be so cool.
I'm excited to see how it all comes together. Granted, I'm not excited to set everything up because one thing Foundry struggles in is accessibility, I would say.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, it can feel a little stressful trying to set everything up.
It is a little much sometimes. I could not.
But anyway, what have you been up to, Glue Boy?
Mainly I'm working on some of my stuff, and I've been just working in general. It's been a fun new routine for me that I've been getting used to. Work in the mornings, come back, and then work on videos or pass out. It's been interesting. That and just like having a new content style for a week or so till my roommate comes back, which I have no clue when that'll be, because I can't ask him since he doesn't answer his phone ever.
Yeah.
But it's fine. We're good. We're chilling.
Yeah. Definitely, an indicator that you need to figure out an alternative at some point.
Yeah, I have the alternative, is what it is. Like right now, it's just the difference of like I'll do the work. I'm just not enjoying it as much.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, you need to figure out, what happens if they like move away or
Oh yeah,
something.
We have we've discussed. I've discussed that with them. We have like a lot of ideas for that, and at the end of the day too, like I'll figure something out when I'm forced to. But like, I can't get upset with somebody for using their own equipment.
Well, yeah, of course.
And then on the other hand, like the big downside right now is just I'm not as satisfied with it, but all the feedback I've been getting has been very positive. So like, it's not negatively impacting me in any way. It's just my satisfaction in the edit is less. So it's not enough that I'm like, I need to do something right now. It's a minor inconvenience only on my end.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, what are you going to do about it? That's just how it be sometimes.
Fair.
Once summer comes around, I'm working something out.
Well, summer's almost here. We're just a couple months away. True. I guess you got me there, Chief.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's been wrong with me. I've been sleeping a lot lately, or I was good. I went to bed at the right time last night, and I was supposed to get up at 7, 8 a.m. Work on a bunch of stuff today. I woke up at 3:45. So that didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
But I still know what video I'm gonna produce for tomorrow, and I was upset that I didn't get a video out on Wednesday, but I'm not gonna be upset, because if I get 2 videos out this week, have already been doing better than I have the last few weeks before. So small steps. Can't be upset. I've been having a rough year so far.
Yeah, man.
So I'm trying to be patient with myself, but at the same time, it's very obvious when I do like when I am consistent with my videos on the channel versus when I'm not. The numbers just look better when I'm consistent, which who would have thought?
I know,
But
that's the reason. Like, it's seeing that where I'm like, I definitely can't take any time off. Like, ever.
yeah,
And it's a sad fact of it. Like, you just
Yeah.
can't. You just have to keep pushing it. And the one time I took like a video break off because literally situations spiraled out of control with my computer where I physically couldn't make a video. There was no options for me.
Yeah.
And then it was like then my numbers were down for like a good bit before they finally recovered. And then YouTube has the fucking gall to make tweets like, take a mental health break if you need it, guys. Don't burn yourself out. Where it's like, no, we can't because of your algorithm.
Yeah. It is. And by the way, Definies, when you say what mods did I pick up, what mods did I not pick up? It's a laundry list of mods. I'm not kidding. Even for Lancer, which is not even that, like, there's not like a lot for Lancer right now. I had like 20 mods. Like, no cap.
Where do you get the mods?
When you have Foundry, you can look through like a window when you're setting up the games. So you have like this whole custom picker thing.
Nice. It's like so much work on your end, but like I am so excited.
Yeah.
All I ask is like at most, or maybe even at least like a day. Like you just have it like by Monday, because I really need to fiddle with a lot of stuff with my character sheet before I'm like want to play it on Tuesday.
Well, you were gone, right? We're all gathering next Tuesday, but I might not stream it because I'm figuring a lot of people are not going to work on their character stuff before the session starts.
Yeah.
Also, I might have to actually sit there and do it. Also, I have to be running Foundry for you guys to actually get on and do stuff.
And not a repeat of our Lancer session where it's 2.5 hours of trying to work on Foundry.
Yeah.
Instead of playing. Yeah, it makes sense.
So we're probably not going to do a live session, but we're all going to sit down and probably spend a whole session's worth of time getting everything set up.
Fair.
So
that means I'm going to have to also sit down and actually finish the Pixel Mini for my boy. Oh, the Path Builder Importer would be very helpful.
I haven't seen that one yet. So, but there's a ton, and we'll get to it. I mean, we just finished Lancer a couple days ago, so, and I've been trying to work on my YouTube content, but that's stuff I'll be working on this weekend into Monday. But yeah, and my God. As well, life. I messaged last week my apartment complex. Hey, my father died. I need to go move to be closer to my mother, which is not true, but they don't know that.
They don't know that. Lie to your landlords.
I mean, to be fair, it will technically become true.
Yeah.
Because my mom, when she inherits the place that my grandfather has up there, she's just planning on moving up there. So
Besides, what are your landlords gonna do? Like check you on that knowledge? Like
Yeah,
follow up in like a year?
they're watching all my YouTube videos. Like, is he fooling us? Is he trying to pull one over our eyes? Imagine they hire a PI. But and I didn't hear anything until Monday, so they took like a week almost to reply. Hey, guitar guy Nick. Thank you for the follow. I'm glad that you enjoyed the video. A lot of people, didn't, but that's just YouTube. That's just how it is.
Disagreed with a YouTuber people like, so they're just gonna naturally side with that YouTuber. It's just kind of the nature of making any commentary response stuff.
Well, literally, I let comments bother me too much because I'm so concerned with trying to be like very open and amiable in the tabletop space. Some people play the way they want to play, but I made the Ghost video, which is like, Ghost is the worst archetype ever, and people kept like responding with like paragraph long comments like, I think you got it wrong, or you're just so negative. And I rewatched it recently and I was like, my god, I was actually pretty positive for the most part. Like I said, most of the feats were okay or good.
I mean,
there was just some jankiness.
I've edited videos for you, like, so I know it like the full thing. I've had to watch it like twice almost. But like, I've edited videos for you where you're more negative than the Ghost one.
Yeah.
And even then, it's like, because like the Firebrand, I was sad to figure out that sucked. Because I like the idea of the Firebrands, and I don't think that archetype really nails it. It's kind of underwhelming. Or the other one is like the Pistol Monk archetype that is designed for monk, but why would you take it? Like, there's stuff like that.
Well, it's like
in those, but like the difference is that there's just a weird subsect of people on YouTube who have never heard of like clickbait in the thumbnail or hyperbole in the title and thumbnail. When honestly, the best comment you received on that video is, I guess you could say, this archetype isn't awesome.
Yeah, which
that one's great.
Which I realized that when I was typing the video, I was like, should I change it? Nah.
It's gotta stay in the series, but like, I really liked that comment because that's just like, all right, cool. Somebody gets it.
But the same with the Mr. X video. It's like, a lot of people are like, you're saying this or that, and there's a lot of times in the video I'm like, I know he's not like this, or I know he doesn't mean that, or yada yada. But the way he came across in this video painted it in a direction that was really much not what Pathfinder is, and was very misguided and very biased in a lot of ways. And it's important because, again, it's progressively a bigger and bigger YouTuber who comes on to say, hey, Pathfinder, it's a game. I played it, and I liked it for a bit, but I have all these complaints. When the complaints are never the thing. Like, Puffin Forest was like, math is hard. I don't like all the bonuses you get in Pathfinder. And all the extra stuff and abilities and yada yada. And it's just like, that's not how Pathfinder is at all.
I also suck with math, and it's barely that.
And all kinds of stuff. And let's see here. Turn of Firebrand was part the basis for Swashbuckler, which makes sense. I think Space Red the Bragger got nothing in the Firebrand book, which is great, by the way. I really need to look at that book. I haven't actually read that book. So I really need something to change my mind on the Firebrands, because they're such an uninteresting organization to me. And I know I know the creators of the book are really hyped about it, so I should like actually go and give it a try. But this has not been a great year for me to really do anything other than survive. So I'm a mod on Ronald the Rule Lawyer server, so we discussed this a lot. I also saw Treant's underwhelming reason to, Treant Monk, I did hear some stuff about that, but you know, I don't believe Treant Monk has nearly the same
I don't even
sway. Yeah, 67. No, that's Treant Monk's temple. I'm assuming that. Yeah, it has to be. Treant Monk's temple must be it because there's no one else. Yeah, 67 point something K, which I mean, don't get me wrong, isn't a small YouTuber by any means. But it's not like the 100K plus.
Yeah, Mr. Rex is like a big figure in there. I think it's a little different.
He's the biggest current content creator for D&D at the moment.
Huh. You know, it's the fun thing where I know, like we mentioned it on TableTalk, like you summed it up really well. I like the difference of when we make a video and get responses, because I have the luxury in my game, being a war game, that I can say something's the best and I'm mathematically correct and you cannot like debunk that. Because I'm like, yeah, this thing's the best. And everyone's like, oh, how do you know? Okay, well, here's the Art of War guys and people who play the army and have placed top tables in the giant opens saying that exact same thing with the reasoning. Or the other thing of the only video I've made that got massive amount of pushback was my my Primarch tier list video. But I couldn't get upset about any of the comments because I'm making that video from a perspective of I'm mostly joking.
Right.
Like in that video, my ranking, like the actual list, I could make an hour-long video going over my legit opinions over all of them, and it'd be the exact same. But like I reduce it because it's funnier, and to reduce characters down to weird like stereotypes and stuff. Like the reasoning and stuff's a joke. So when I'm approaching something from absurdity, it's hard for me to get upset at like someone's thesis statement of why Perturabo is the best when I can go nuh-uh. Which is how I respond to most of the criticisms of my tier list, was people just being like, Dorn isn't the coolest Primarch, and I go nuh-uh.
Yeah, nuh-uh.
And they can't refute me.
Yeah. Marcus Finkel says your Ghost video was great. The archetype seemed lackluster to me even before seeing your video. You know, the thing is, right, if you break it down to the brass tacks of Ghosts as the archetype, it's not bad. It's got some interesting things. My issue is it's just... The ironic thing is a lot of the complaints I got, which is it's mostly an RP archetype, right? And I was like, okay, if it is, then why does it not feel like you're playing a ghost at all?
It feels like you're playing a person with ghost-like reduced abilities. Because, like, I think the part that hits is that comment you got of saying, like, another example of Paizo putting balance before, like, common sense or something. Because when you're explaining some of the rules, I'm like, I understand why it's like that, but that's not what a ghost is.
And a lot of people thought I was angry about how it was balanced. I was like, no, it's not. I'm angry about how it was balanced. No, I want the character to be balanced. If anything, I just wish they made the character more ghost-like with bigger drawbacks.
Yeah.
Give them flight, give them the ability to move through walls freely, but like nerf their stats in a lot of other ways, you know?
Make it
Go
like
more ghost.
RPG when you decide to play an undead character. You have some major strengths, but some major fucking drawbacks.
Yeah.
There's some issues to playing undead, but like if you do it and you know what you're doing, it's fun.
Yeah.
And like the best part about Ghost is grappling incorporeal creatures. That part does kind of rule. But I feel like you could just play Ghost Eater.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's just like there's a lot of things with it. I think the rest of the undead archetypes are actually going to be a lot better for sure. Ghost, I just had a problem with because you didn't feel like a ghost. No. If they had said that you were some kind of other spirit, they kind of invented a type of spirit that is like much more corporeal in a lot of ways. Like you're someone who has a physical body but is slowly fading out of existence or slowly becoming a ghost. You know what I mean? If that was kind of the angle they took it, I think it would feel a lot better, but that wasn't what they're offering. They're offering for you to be a ghost, but feel nothing like a ghost.
And at the end of the day, like, if people are arguing, like, hey, let's make it's an RP, like, archetype. couldn't you just make a deal with your DM to make your character just your custom ancestry as a ghost? Like, well, couldn't you just do that same logic? Like, because it just sounds like it's yeah, you're picking this archetype for roleplay reasons, but it doesn't hit as hard. You could just make something a lot more solid with your DM.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It just felt very disjointed between the mechanics of it and the roleplay of it. So, my issue overall with it was it felt like you weren't actually a ghost and they were making up a bunch of mechanics that really didn't make sense. Yeah, sure. I'll say whatever. I'm open to the idea of my thought on ghost bound or sight bound being wrong, that I misinterpreted it. That's completely fine. They could have not put Sightbound in it at all, and it would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
You could have just said Death Sight, and Death Sight is only used for your characters, whatever. But when you put Sightbound in, and then ghosts have an ability called Bound Sight, it's confusing. And also, that's just kind of like a function of ghosts. So, there's just a lot of things that, like, their fly speed, they're floating, which makes them have a fly speed, but they're essentially walking. They could just say your character moves as if, despite not touching the ground. They can bypass certain types of hazardous terrain or difficult terrain because they're floating a few inches off the ground, but not call it floating, not giving them a fly speed. And then when they get the flying ability, then they get a fly speed. Like, there's so many ways that things could have been interpreted that would just be less guff, less annoyance around just the very simple actions they want you to take as a ghost. It was really, really bad.
Yeah, I feel like there was a method to approach it from, just naming it like ghost and being like you're a spirit, you're a specter. Just off rip is you're kind of setting yourself up for a type of play, and then it just doesn't deliver. It is the big problem. And I will say, like, Guitar Guy Nick, disliking the Vampire Sunlight stuff, I feel like it's very interesting that you said that, because I'm currently playing 2 vampires in 2 separate D&D games, and at least how my DM runs it is I do have Vampire Sunlight sensitivity, but it's always assumed that I'm covered. But yeah, there's never like any, oh, this is an anti-sunlight amulet just baked into the game. And honestly, a lot of it too is ignored by my DM, because I think he knows that I don't give a shit and I won't track it. Because if I don't like something, I just won't track it.
Yeah.
Like inventory management or food. Because if you make me eat food in my D&D game, I'm not going to pay attention. I'm too busy eating food outside of my D&D game.
Yeah. Stuff like that is always kind of rough in a sense.
It's the thing that translates, where it's like, it's the difference between like how easy it is to do something like that in real life, where you're like, ooh, sun's out, let me pop up my collar a little bit, put on my hood, and then it just takes up time to play the game when you have to, like, I guess, act out real life in a tabletop game. It's kind of just a needless filler. It's like shoelacing when it comes to a script. It's stuff that just assumed that should like happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's like, one, a vampire should be partaking in a game that is more centered around night-based stuff, or just in areas that like just constantly have overcast. Mm-hmm. Eye of Dread is kind of like that in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of actual vampires there, so all that kind of stuff. But there's just a lot of situations where sometimes the rules just get in the way. And also, because Paizo's Paizo, they're not going to give the vampire so much that sunlight vulnerability, I think, actually outweighs it. Because they're just, they don't want anyone to become that strong. So
yeah,
it's just going to feel more like a hassle than a proper balancing.
Isn't that
and
archetype?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I missed that. I knew there was a ghoul, because I've heard ghoul's cool. That Phoenix.
Yeah, there's vampire, ghoul, lich, zombie, and ghost, and then skeleton is actually an ancestry.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Never narrate the bathroom, my big cats. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Textbook shoelacing. It's one of the things you learn when you start writing a script, like especially a film script. is just like there's no need to narrate things that are already assumed to happen in day-to-day life, because it's just filler. That's why you don't see a lot of people like hanging up phones, like, or actually, as the term comes from, tying their shoelaces before they leave. Like,
Right.
it's just unnecessary. And a lot of times I see some games who try to they attribute hyper like realism with tedium, which is my biggest pet peeve in a lot of things. I really hate realism because of that misconception people have, where to make this game as realistic as possible, we need to make this game as tedious as real life. But no, I'm playing a thing to have fun. I'm gonna have fun. I really like that description, Dead Phoenix.
Oh, and Mummy. I forgot Mummy. That's true. Thank you, Andrew.
That is a really funny description of Ghoul. I'm gonna have to look into that now. I love Swashbuckler.
That's true. Actually, we're now about 30 minutes in. So, yeah, let's address the proper title of today's video. People are building their characters wrong. So first of all, I'm going to preface. You can build your characters however you want. Don't let anyone tell you differently.
Yeah,
Actually, that's... Go ahead.
At the end of the day, you're playing a game that's not competitive. You're playing a cooperative narrative game. As long as everyone's having fun, you've done your job.
And thanks, Decrepit Kid, for the follow. But that's exactly why, actually, we're talking about this today. Because it goes both ways. People who want to min-max their characters should feel free to min-max their characters. But also not feel like they need to tell everyone to min-max their characters. Because sometimes players don't want to. And it's something I've been noticing in our Discord, which, if you don't know, we have an awesome Discord linked down below in the description or below on Twitch, where, you know, we have a bunch of people making games and all that kind of cool stuff. But people are like, hey, I'm making a character, but, you know, I feel like if I downgrade my strength a little bit, I'm going to be wasting a lot of damage on this character, or this, that, or the other thing. The game, first of all, exists outside of combat, you know? Like, most of your journey should technically be outside of combat. If you're playing a very combat-heavy game, that's understandable, but if you're playing your average tabletop, combat is just 1/3 of the pillars of gameplay.
Yeah, unless you're going into a game where your DM's like, hey guys, we're doing a very like combat-heavy dungeon delving campaign. That's when that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have like utility stuff, because unless your DM is like combat, okay, combat over, next combat, boss wave. You still have some parts to do outside of combat, some setups you can do.
Which is exactly the reason why, if people want to min-max, you should let them do so. If there's games like Abomination Vaults where it's mostly a dungeon crawl, then yeah, totally. That's something that, you know, is exactly what the game is asking you to do, in a sense. But for a standard campaign, for like a standard going here, do this, investigate that, talk to these people or whatever, if your character isn't super excelling in combat, you're fine. Because the thing is, when it comes to like Pathfinder and Pathfinder's combat system overall, is it doesn't account for things like status penalties or status bonuses or whatever. So just by the act of teamwork, flanking, all that kind of stuff, you're actually pushing the numbers lower, or being able to take on higher level challenges, for instance, easier because of that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's I think a fun thing to bring up with that too, this comment, I think it's a good point. It's blue on my screen. It's like Decrepit 90. It's a weird situation. The game I DM, my two min-maxers seem way more miserable because bad rolls exist than my non-min-maxers most of the time.
Yeah.
I think it's that you set up that expectation if you really min-max a character, and that's your tendency, where you're making a character that's really, really good, like an expert at like a thing. And then when you just can't do that thing, it sucks. Because then it's like, you have that innate like feeling of, well, what's the point then? What's my character if I can't make this? When, I mean, just bad rolls happen. You'll just have bad luck. And a lot of people who don't heavily do that are like, yeah, I'm just kind of doing my thing. I tried to roll perception. Ah, dang, didn't hit it. Anyways, it was a middle, like, of the road perception like bonus I got. I'm not even that good at it.
Yeah.
And then on conversely, when those characters do hit, they're like, "Hey, yo, I just popped off. I got like a nat 20, and I only got like a +7 to my perception. Let's go."
Right. And that's actually an interesting point. I do like that perspective
I think it's a
of
really good point.
if you're min-maxing, the whole purpose is for you to excel at or to do the most, yada yada. The thing with like narratives is failure is a necessary feature of a narrative. The fact that your characters can't succeed all the time or can't be the ones to do certain tasks is what makes a narrative interesting. And so when you play with a mindset of I'm either I'm either succeeding at what I'm doing or it's a failure of my build, is a very miserable way to play the game, honestly. Not that min-maxers necessarily are like that. There's tons of min-maxers who, like, they just like having an optimized character, but they're okay with the roleplay and everything, and that's fine too.
I feel like to an extent, most people do min-max to a small extent. Like,
well, there's a difference between optimization and min-maxing.
Yeah, like I know for a fact, like I've as narrative as a player I am, I'll go into builds being like, okay, this is gonna be my max stat, this is gonna be my lowest. Let me just dump strength or intelligence and bump up charisma to like max, like like do those things. But it's the difference between like I'm not going into it being like I'm making this really strong character and then it fails and you're like, ah, damn it, because I think it's just like it's a mindset that you have, and it's the thing where people can tell you like, yeah, just don't do that, just don't min-max, don't view your character like that, where it's a hard thing you have to like actually break down if that's something you truly want to change. It's hard to change a method of which you like fully look at something and perceive it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even one of my players who currently is mostly like on the RP side of things, he's gone through 2 different characters in Riptide now, and it's because he wanted to make a thug style rogue, but his roles in the beginning were garbage, and he just wasn't liking the character because he kept failing with the character, and he just kind of fell out of love with the idea of the character because he never rolled well.
Yeah.
And it's you gotta not paint your perception of your characters with the idea that they need to be badasses first of all, because they're starting their journey, they're gonna be not as good at things. It's like people who have these really elaborate backstories where their character helped save the kingdom or whatever, but they're level 1. Like, it happens all the time, and it's just like they get upset when their character does something really dumb or fails to do something really simple because their stats didn't really work out, or their roles are just not helping them. Like, they're not rolling well with the character, they're not succeeding as much with the character as they like, thus they feel like their character's been kind of somehow diminished because they're not as cool as they want. And everyone wants to make a cool character, don't get me wrong, I want to make cool characters, but it's about understanding that you're starting your journey and building up to your character being that eventual cool badass, rather than the reverse, expecting to do everything right the first time. I mean, my wizard in the Out of the Abyss campaign was, funny enough, modeled under, I'm this awesome wizard of Thay, I'm here investigating things. Everyone kept dunking on him, things didn't go his way, he was getting really upset, so he took a deal with the demon, he gains a bunch of charisma and wisdom, and then he realized, man, I was a very petulant child and not doing a lot to actually succeed, so let's change my mentality. And he started working with his allies, and he started really focusing on like understanding that like he's not going to be able to do everything by himself. And by the end of it, he was a powerful character and really cool, but he had to learn how to be like that, rather than his initial impression that just because he's a wizard of Thay, everyone should just bow down to him,
Yeah, it is a cool thing to bake that into like a character development, because as someone who faced a similar issue in that same Pathfinder game, because like I switched out for my Magus mainly because like it wasn't hitting how I expected it would, and like you have those moments where you just kind of fuck up a bunch, and then it also, when you do hit, it's not how you picture it, and like it just kind of paints this thing of like I was super invested in this character with like this vibe, this style, and then it doesn't work. And even when it does work, it doesn't work how I wanted it to hit, or it doesn't feel as good. So then you just like undo it. And now, like, and then hopefully you can find yourself a character that you attach with more. Like I did. I'm very happy I switched off my Magus into a wizard, and I never thought in 1,000 years I'd say, man, playing a wizard is fun.
Yeah.
Me, spellcasters are nerds. But this shit rules, and it's also a good thing because I had to make a character that was very tied into the story, especially because I joined in partway through. My mistake was making a character that was like built around being a Magus rather than a character that's built around being in the story.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's read the chat a bit.
Oh,
yeah, I think the biggest issue with min-max LP really shows up from not communicating with the DM. I mean, a little bit, yes, but I think it's also a little bit people setting their expectations for a game. People who are min-maxing, like, why would a character want to min-max, right? Because they want to see big damage numbers. Okay, so when you don't roll big damage numbers, that feels bad, you know, because that's the whole thing you set your character for. So it's your own expectations, but also, yeah, the DM, if the game is not going to be as much combat, they need to, like, tell their players, hey, you should have more stats allocated to your skill proficiencies this game, because combat is going to be, like, not as prevalent as maybe some other games. I found that one of my ex-players is obsessed with the numbers and made this whole table have bad vibes because they felt the rogue wasn't doing anything because precision damage being nullified. Yeah, it also feels bad when one of your core character features is being negated by the campaign, which that's a good conversation to have with people overall. But them being upset with that consistently shows that, you know, like, they just weren't prepared for something like that to happen, and they need to find other ways their characters can do well. It's like, oh shit, my sneak attack is doing nothing now. What else can I do? Because rogues, especially when they get access to their debilitations, can still do a lot to enemies that they would sneak attack, essentially, even if they're not doing a bunch of damage. So there are a lot of ways you can actually apply it, and it's really, really good. I had a Magus that got annoyed that their True Strike Spell Strike doesn't work out, and I just don't like, and I'm just like, I don't know what you expect. Yeah, sometimes you just roll garbage. It sucks, especially when it's a True Spell Strike, because you don't have a lot of spell slots as a Magus. And that's a 2-slot investment. But you have to expect that sometimes you're just gonna miss, even with True Strike. You know,
that's the game you play when you're like playing with dice. Sometimes those dice aren't gonna show up with what you want.
The thing with Magus is, despite that, spell striking with your cantrips is still one of the most, like, hit efficient strikes in the game.
Yeah.
It does massive damage and can do a lot of additional effects on top of it, just with the cantrip. So, you know, that's why, like, I often would say, if you're a Magus, don't spell strike with a spell as much as a cantrip. Only do that when you're, like, super set up, or you're, like, you have expansive spell strike where you can do, like, area of effects or whatever with your spell strikes, because even then you're still likely to do something. It's just, you know, Magus is a class that I feel there's some pitfalls with the expectations. And also the playstyle is very much like, it's a very high action text class. So you're really investing a lot in your spell strikes if you're only spell striking. Find other ways to play Magus that isn't always just I spell strike every round. And I guarantee you'll have way more fun. I'm also finding that when people come from D&D, I have to explicitly explain that this is a team game, even more so because Pathfinder 2 chains by helping the next person. True. And in fact, kind of what brought this whole conversation on was someone was talking about Swashbuckler, and they were kind of very upset that they couldn't invest in more of their skills because they really wanted to max out their strength. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you focusing only on your strength as a swashbuckler? They're more action. They have more skill feats than your standard martial does. And one of their biggest benefits is they get bonuses towards actions that inherently nerf enemies really badly. Like if you're a gymnast, one of the things you do is trip enemies or grapple enemies to make them flat-footed. That's a 2 status penalty drop in their AC that they can or their allies can use to do a lot of damage. And Swashbuckler still does a good amount of damage, pretty efficient. They're not going to have as good a damage as, say, a fighter or a barbarian will, but that comes with the sheer amount of benefits they can add to their team by using their various panache actions, and the fact that they're still a really competent fighter, and they get a lot of bonuses for skills that they can use outside of combat. So a swashbuckler can be a character who excels a lot more in exploration and do really well in combat as well than like a fighter who, unless they're investing their skills very efficiently, a fighter can be left with nothing to do in a lot of non-combat situations.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, as someone who's played Swashbuckler in one of our early, like, Pathfinder games, like, that's the thing you have to come to terms with pretty early. Because I went in being like, okay, I'm going to play, like, maybe a more fightery rogue. That's what I went into it. I don't think that's exactly the best way you could describe Swashbuckler. Because in the end, it's a character that's built around exploiting any debuff or even putting on more debuffs. And when you crit, well, you crit fucking hard. Like, that's kind of the play style in a way. Because I know for my character, I was stacking up flat-footed and bleed a lot. Like, that was just something that was a constant for my character. And that's helpful. I mean, flat-footed's a really nice thing to just tack on enemies, like a fun little freebie. Just, you know, being easier to hit kind of sets everyone else up. So I think, like, yeah, you're not building your swashbuckler to be the best DPS. If you want to stand in front of somebody, swing at them, and do the most damage, you should probably just play fighter.
And to be fair, like, Pathfinder is really the first game of its kind where there's very tangible benefits for working as a team. Almost 100%. No tabletop has as much setup as Pathfinder does. And because of how tight all the math is, all like aid actions that, you know, are tripping the enemy or whatever. In D&D, it can feel sometimes terrible to do anything other than an attack action.
Yep.
Because you can grapple an enemy, sure, but what does that do? It just immobilizes them. It doesn't do anything. So you're wasting one attack to prevent an enemy from moving, who probably will just break out of it anyway. So, you know. But in Pathfinder, there's not even just actions that increase or decrease stats. There's also actions that force enemies to take particular actions. Like when you trip an enemy, you're forcing them to stand up or they're at a huge penalty. That can set up for attacks of opportunity. That can just burn actions on the enemy's side. It's one of the reasons why slow or stun is actually really good, even though it might only take away an action or whatever. If it can last for an extended period of time. Heck, if you're a character who's not as damage focused, taking one of the enemy's major actions that do a lot of damage is actually a very huge benefit for your team. Mm-hmm. It just might not feel like it, but when you understand that that's what's actually happening, that's where it feels really good. Let's see. And yeah, the panache and finisher and swashbuckler, I do think actually just feels very, a little disjointed. It feels like you're giving up a lot of benefits for the chance to do more damage a lot of the time. Yeah, there are finishers that can do like particular debuffs or guaranteed damage or whatever. But I think like finishers are just that, finishers. There's something you blow at the end of the fight when you're trying to close out an enemy really quick or you have no more turns that you feel like you're going to get. It's not something that you should rotate in, even though it has a higher DPR efficiency. It's actually more of a waste.
Yeah, it is good to stay in your bond mod or have panache active like as much as possible sometimes. Which is another thing I learned when playing Swashbuckler, is you just learn that, like, sometimes it's better to use your panache. You have so many other abilities, and then, like, save that finisher. And then in that glorious moment where you just like, oh, yeah, let's finisher this, and you nat 20, it's like a special type of high.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're saying I'm relying on a crit, it's probably not the best method of playing. If you're like, if I crit this, oh boy.
You know, Decrepit 90s Kid, that's actually very interesting. I never thought about that. Because Psychics, they have, like, downtime after they unleash their Psyche. That's actually a very interesting, like, play style that I never really considered before, but that actually sounds really fun. The idea that you have, like, your high DPS rounds, or your high efficiency rounds, and then your low rounds where you have to figure other actions that are better taken when you're kind of on that low to kind of help the team or whatever. That's actually a fun play style, so actually, that makes me want to try Psychic now, actually.
I also just want to try Psychic, dude.
Swashbuckler, who doesn't always hit, but he can do a lot when he succeeds Bone Mott. Yes, Bone Mott is such a good action. Especially if you have spellcasters. Being able to drop an enemy's will saves is nuts. There's all kinds of ways that Bone Mott is just very, very helpful in a game. And, you know, there's all kinds of things where, like, a lot of the actions, Pathfinder kind of breaks certain conventions, which actually guitar. Let's see, can we have a video explained to D&D YouTubers who are trying Pathfinder to forget DPR brain and focus on optimizing for utility? I would make it, but I like guitar too much. I mean, fair. Well, one, I don't try to make very targeted videos in particular. Though that is a good thing to kind of explain. But even then, it will oftentimes just fall on deaf ears. People who prefer DPR are numbers people, right? So they should know the benefits of things like cooperative actions or whatever. The thing is, they're oftentimes from selfish people who want to do the most damage themselves. They don't want to do the teamwork actions that get the numbers. If anything, they'd prefer someone else to do that for them, you know, so their numbers are even better. So, people with DPR brain, yeah, I agree. It does foster a bad approach, but they're just going to think whatever they're going to think, you know. They're going to have to play the game and experience teamwork in order for them to understand the power.
Conversely, big damage is good.
Yeah.
I like DPR. As someone who mainly plays DPS stuff. I mean, I'm trying to play a DPS wizard. It's just because I like doing the damage myself and being like that powerhouse rather than setting someone else up. I ain't that much of a support player.
Well, the point of Magicast is probably not the best way because they don't have really good DPRs necessarily.
I'll find a way.
They have situations where they can have really good DPR.
I'll make it every situation.
And to be fair, I do actually like throwing tons of small enemies at you guys, which can help the DPR numbers. So
exactly, fireball.
There are situations where you will do well.
Oh, 100%. Especially once I alter my spell list a bit for next game.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much about D4s, and that's like the thing with builds, right? That's why my build videos I think really stick out to people, because my build videos are never one DPR focused, and two they play on character themes and also are mechanically efficient at what they do. Even my Envoy of the Lantern King video, you're just playing a very annoying character that if the enemies focus on them, they're going to get a lot of like, they're going to hurt for it because you do a lot of like damage back to people who target you. And targeting you is also just a nightmare. But if they don't focus on you, they get debuffed all the hell, which is a fun play style.
Yeah.
But it's not a DPR play style. So, you know. looking at effective actions per round might be better. Well, yeah, looking at like what you can set up for your team per round, and that's also a question of like what when are the enemies in the initiative compared to yours. You might even want to delay actions for certain kinds of builds. There's just all kinds of things. D4 just did a community post complaining that his PF2 videos aren't doing well, but he's made like 100 D videos and like 4 Pathfinder videos. I don't know what he expects, so he's thinking of going back. Well, okay. So on that end, you have to understand that for people, especially of a channel of his size, this is a job. They have to make money. And the thing is, whether anyone likes it or not, more people play D&D than Pathfinder 2e. So inherently, when you focus on making Pathfinder 2e videos, you are intentionally making less targeted videos for your audience, which sucks. It sucks for him because he probably wants to do them, but he feels like whenever he does, he's losing money. And it's completely his prerogative to focus on what he needs for his financial needs, you know. So you have to understand that, like, you can't blame people for stuff like that. It's just how the field is, you know. For me, it's actually beneficial to make Pathfinder videos because there's less competition, you know. So it's actually easier for me to grow in this side of things than it is if I wanted to do like D&D content, for instance. So, you know, everyone's kind of playing the game differently based on what their needs are. He has an audience, so he needs to work on making targeted videos. I don't have that big of an audience, so I need to grow an audience, you know. And money's not as big of an issue for me right now because I just don't make a living on YouTube. So it's just one of those things where, you know, give the guy some slack. If he wants to go back to D&D because that works better for him financially, good. Does it suck for us in the community who want more Pathfinder content creators at higher numbers? Yeah, of course. But until Pathfinder gets to a point where its player numbers and GM numbers are competing with D&D's, actually, it's just the nature of the game, you know.
Yeah, that's a sad nature of it. Whenever I decide to make a video that ain't Warhammer related, we'll see how it hits. I still plan to make extra content around other things, but we'll see.
Yeah.
The problem is just sometimes you like that subject and you just keep making content about it. You branch out and you're like, I like this. I enjoy this thing. I also still really like talking about this other thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, and YouTube's a platform of hobbies and niches.
Exactly.
There's some people who make incredibly niche content that still do really, really well. So, you know, it just depends on how the ecosystem is of whatever field you're in.
It's straight east of YouTube.
And yeah, Andrew Fullerton, my Dreadstriker build is one of the most selfish builds I've designed.
It is very, very combat-y.
It's very, very focused, and I made it specifically because it is one of the most efficient damaging builds you can make in the game currently. But hey, it's because there's people who want that playstyle. Also, when you trip enemies with your Mauler abilities, that still helps your team technically, even if you're doing it mostly for yourself. It also just has the inherent benefits of helping your team too. So, you know, even Dreadstriker plays with allies, but they don't need to. That's just the benefit of Dreadstriker. So, one of the main reasons why, you know, I made today's topic is, one, to show people that, yeah, there obviously, as we can see in the chat here, there's a lot of people who understand the game is not all combat and that you can have fun in a lot of other ways without min-maxing every one of your numbers to make sure that they are the highest they can be to get that 10% extra damage per round or whatever.
It's all
And
about playing what's fun at your table, keeping up your vibes, having a great time. Like it is strange. It's the thing I always see in like tabletop, it's just the online tabletop space, and like I will never get the you are not having fun in the way I have fun, therefore you're wrong and stupid.
yeah,
I'm happy that our community isn't that. I would be very annoyed constantly if Table Talk was just a like, excuse me, if you're not doing damage, you're not playing the game.
right. You're not contributing to the team's overall win condition.
Yeah, and it's like a picturing a game like, you better be doing damage actually, and then like the actual session is like, all talking like intrigue session of the fighter just in the background, arms crossed because they can't fucking do anything.
Sure, guitar guy Nick. Sounds like something we can talk about at the very least. Just know, as the nature of hot takes, people disagree with you. You have to understand that you're the one who put it out there.
I'll disagree immediately. Just to spice things up, I'll disagree.
I mean, the whole point of hot takes is to start a conversation, I would say.
Yeah.
Watch it be the coldest take ever, yeah. It might be in some circles, some circles,
Depends who you're talking to. I see it on Twitter all the time. It's like hot take, y'all, and then it's like an opinion everyone holds. I think those are really funny.
And that's the thing, Israel. Well, like I'll also say, there's sometimes you can have fun doing a build that doesn't focus around damage and doesn't even do anything necessarily that effective, but you like the way a mechanic works, or anything like that. Like if you're playing in Last Epoch, I play the Necromancer or the Acolyte as like a plague build or whatever, and it's viewed as not being super meta because, like, rather than killing all the enemies instantaneously, I blight all the enemies and then they all eventually die even if I do nothing, and I just enjoy that playstyle despite it taking longer to actually kill the enemies, because I just like putting a disease, watching it percolate, watching it like bounce around all the enemies, and then all the enemies die and I don't have to do anything about it. That feels fun to me, even though it is technically less efficient because they could have all just died in a second,
Yeah, there's a better option, but like, meh, there's the thing you could do that would just is the objective better choice, or there's the thing you can do and have fun. One of those is better for your brain. You're just gonna like the fun part that hits that dopamine.
I like to have a political prerequisite before inviting people to my table, so we're on the same political persuasion. Online is difficult to judge who you're playing with. This gets under a lot of people's skin. I mean, politics are such a, like, they're not black and white. There's people who can clash on some views and agree on other views. So I mean, hey, again, if that is what you prefer, go for it. That, if someone's upset that they can't be in your game, well, I mean, I guess you must be a really great DM at that point. But I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things where, yeah, there is very significant views that it feels like you could be playing with someone who just disagrees with something that you agree with. It's like, not to make something over, but it's like abortion, You're playing with someone who thinks women shouldn't have the choice to do such a thing. That can feel really uncomfortable when you find that out. So it can be good to kind of air that kind of stuff out if that's something that's very meaningful to you. Some people also just care less about political viewpoints overall.
Yeah. It sounds like a very specific method of weeding out the vibes and making sure the vibes are kept intact of like a group, which most of the time, if it's a game between friends, it's probably gonna be fine. But like, it's less of a difference of, oh, sorry, sorry, liberal, you can't join our game. This is a game for communists only.
Right.
It's more of a like, hey, do you frame hating groups of people as a political opinion? Weeding that out, good shit, because no, I don't want to play with somebody who just, for some reason, despises groups of people. That's shitty and weird. But
Yeah.
like, it's that difference of like, what's your opinion on tax laws, and like when should the national retirement age be, and rather than like, hey, do you like gay people? You cool with them? That's like a different question, I feel, because it is an important thing. You should make sure your table's vibes are intact, and if someone is destroying the vibes, you got to deal with that and get them out of there.
Yeah. You want to make sure you're creating a safe space for all your players.
Everyone should have a good time and feel comfortable and happy being in your game. It should not be a thing that causes any sort of like stress or anxieties for people, because like you're playing a fucking game to have fun with your friends. Like it shouldn't be much deeper than that.
That's why game checklists and session zeros are really important in tabletop.
Yep.
Gotta make sure that everyone's on the same page on a lot of things. So, you know,
I'm not
one.
Of new people, like just go hang out. Go like have a pre-session zero hangout. See if you vibe with all these new people, and if you don't, just kind of like, sorry, something came up, can't join the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy that. Or like, oh shit, yeah, this entire group rules, except for this one guy who got in a really weird like conspiracy tangent that got a little creepy. Like, let's just not invite him.
Yeah. So, you know, it's important to make sure that everyone's on the right page. I agree with that statement. I'm also not someone who like puts my politics on a very high pedestal. I just want people to be not shitty to each other and to not want terrible things for other people. That's pretty much it.
And we just have a friend circle that agrees.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, we're friends, obviously.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's not anything we usually have to worry about.
Yeah, we aren't really going about a lot of strangers, inviting them into our game. Usually if we have a new person like join in one of our games, they're vetted by like a friend, and we're like, all right, trust you.
Let's see. Pathfinder 2 feels like a game made for silly ideas to be functional. I mean, it really is. It's actually super hard to make. You could play, if you really wanted to, you could play a martial wizard if you were super set on it, and you could still be functional. You do have to optimize your martial wizard, I will say. You have to make sure you have some good stat investments in the right ways, otherwise it's just not going to mechanically work. But it's such a far cry from like just being completely infeasible than people think. Like, being a martial wizard just means you have to use your spells and abilities to get one-ups on enemies. Whether that's, heck, summoning. Everyone gets upset about summoning all the time, but a summoned creature is a guaranteed flank. Because unless the enemy turns around and starts smacking your lower level summon to get rid of the flanking benefits of it, you know, you can just have an infinite flank if you really want.
Huh. Damn.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that reminds me of something I saw on Twitter recently. I don't know if you saw this as well. The like using stuff like that for really interesting mechanics with the rules, like summoning a spectral steed or whatever, sending it out so you can get a longer chain lightning off.
Oh yeah, there can be stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Creating points like that. Granted, that's a 2-turn setup for chain lightning, so who knows?
Oh, 100%. Like
everything will last.
Maybe it won't last. Maybe it's not the most like efficient way of doing it, but like.
But you know what you can do.
You know you can, and like when that goes off and succeeds, it hits, and you feel really cool about it. And also that kind of plays into like the wizard. It's like, I'm really a resourceful, intelligent like caster. Like, that's just all around a great situation.
I will say the chain lightning thing does work if you have a familiar.
Yeah, just familiar.
Because you can give your familiar a command, which gives them 2 actions, so they can stride twice, get right into perfect chain lightning territory, and then 2 action chain lightning, and they might live.
Play this shitty wizard, doesn't care about your familiar.
So, you know, hey, stuff you can do. Like my lizard folk ruffian rogue who uses a frying pan and chef knife to cook the enemies after. Yeah, though, can be weird. Use with caution. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like, even if you're using weapons, the weapons are all so balanced that if it's a weapon, you can use it and do damage with it. Like, even the frying pan, you can use, and it can just work well. Is it the best weapon? Maybe not. But the numbers are not going to make that big a difference in the end anyway.
Yeah, what? It's the difference of, like, on average, 1 or 2 extra damage?
It's like a few damage, yeah, per round. Let's see.
I see that argument a lot where it's like, what's the fucking point? Like, if, oh, you're not optimizing, you can be doing 1 extra damage here. It's like, I don't fucking care. It's not enough damage for me to give a shit. If you told me I'm like missing out on like 20 damage, then oh yeah, I'm gonna change some shit. That's big.
Had an interesting game in in a Night of the Grey Death where I played an anti-monarchy communist and someone else played a super pro-monarchist. Yeah, but it was like, again, in-game politics, you can have interesting interactions like that, you know, frenemies, situations. So, can be interesting
etch
in
out into out-of-game shit and make people uncomfortable, it's fine. I did the same thing to an extent where when I was doing the Star Wars Fantasy Flight System, we were doing an Old Republic setting, and I played a Force-sensitive Force atheist who believed that the Jedi and Sith were a bunch of scam artists. And we had an ex-Sith directly in the party who he like would butt heads with a bit because like, yeah, the Force is bullshit. Like, it can lead to some fun stuff as long as everyone at the table is like having fun with it, you're good.
I mean, at that point, take the spell that lets you self-destruct your minions. I mean, yeah, you could do that, but I mean, chain light, it can, again, situational. It's one of those things where the chain lightning one is funny because it's just an interesting interaction. Of course, if you just blow up your minion to damage everything around it, that's fun too. But the chain lightning one is just one you wouldn't expect. That's what makes it funner in the game, actually.
Yeah. You could math it out and be like, this actually could have been done better this way, but people in the moment are having so much fun in this moment.
One of our guys made a Wart Witch build with a treasure when Treasure Vault came out. It's a dwarf witch with the Sentinel dedication to get armor, who is a familiar with the long hammer. Awesome combo, actually. Their familiar has a long hammer, or their familiar is a long hammer?
I'm very curious how a heavily armored witch would play.
Well, that's the thing. One of the reasons kind of why I also brought it up is because Witch gets a lot of actual martial feats, which is really weird and janky.
Huh, really?
Yeah. Because, like, Eldritch Nails, you get nails which are really good, and I feel like Eldritch Nails are worth picking up the Witch archetype dedication just for that. Because my Magus currently, he wields an adamantine axe with runes on it. His nails have bleeding and other runes on it. And then he has hand wraps of mighty blows that makes his fist have other things. So he has 3 weapons essentially at any one time because of the combo.
Be disarmed.
Yeah.
Lose your axe. All right, I'm gonna punch you in the face. Oh no, my hand wraps. I'm gonna claw your eyes out. Like, yeah.
Okay, but a dwarf witch with living hair as their beard. Yeah, it's really fun.
That's really good, actually.
But yeah, you can set up Witch in a lot of ways where they can actually be efficient in combat. They have less health, and you have to account for that. But you can, with spells and various other abilities, create a lot of situations where you're actually doing really well. And because you're a witch, can also get the divine casting, and then you get access to bless, and eventually oh goodness, what's it called? A heroic something. The best buff spell in the game. I think it's a level 3 spell. Oh, what? I'm looking at the whole spell list. What am I doing? Heroism, there it is. Yeah, heroism is so good that it can even make up the difference for a spellcaster to a martial. Because it can eventually give you a +3 status bonus.
Cool.
Heck, getting a +2 status bonus is nuts, and that can make up the difference between proficiencies from classes.
Okay, so it was the Dwarven Weapon Familiarity feat for that heavily armored.
Oh, oh, okay. Yeah. But see, and that's actually one of the really cool things about Ancestries. You can get a wizard who has proficiency with, like, an elven curve blade just by being an elf wizard. Granted, you have the least health in the game, because elves have one of the lowest health bonuses at start.
Good.
But
yeah, that's true. I forgot that's how it's done. Yeah.
Blazing Dive is also really cool, yeah. But yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is it's one of those things where you can play very interesting builds, and yes, are they not the most damage efficient? True. Does that matter? No, because unless your DM is throwing at you ridiculously hard encounters all the time, it's not going to matter. And if you have a good DM and your team is, suboptimal, even if just by a couple of points, they can just throw you encounters one challenge level lower, or whatever. Like, encounters can be made to be challenging for that party. And then you can still let everyone play whatever builds they want, while also, like, challenging them. Rylan coming in with the puns.
Gotta have it.
Just so you know, you're probably a few minutes behind. No. Bad Rylan. There. That'll be a fun award for you later in the video.
That's a really dumb joke.
It is. But with familiarity and ancestry tied, martial weapon becomes simple. Yeah, it's true. And that's what allows you to get up to expert proficiency with them, which keeps you essentially leveled up. So it's really good. Let's see. Requires sustain, though. Yeah, which does make it a little hard. One of the benefits of heroism is it's not sustained. But yeah, I mean, that can work too. I mean, that's the thing, right? I hate this argument that, like, if your spellcaster is not buffing your marshals, they're wasting it. Like, if you're a witch and you're giving yourself heroism and not one of your marshals, like, you're getting a chance to hit like a normal person when you could be increasing their crit chance, for instance. And so it's like, yeah, but who cares? They get to play the character they want to play and be viable, and your character would have been viable for the combat anyway. And Jonathan J. Blair, thanks for the $5 super chat. Just drop in to say I used one of your builds in a new game the other day. Worked great. Thanks for the effort. Thank you. I'm glad the builds help. I really should do more of those builds. They just take a lot of time to put into work. I do have a thrown weapon build coming up, though. That's really good. So if you like thrown weapons, I got a good build for you here soon.
That'll be a fun one. I know that was I doubt it's the same, but I always just remember there's a champion thrown weapon build where when we were doing Rise of the Rune Lords. Like a thrown weapon champion build you made for like a companion we could take along with us.
Yeah.
Instead
I
of
don't
the guy
remember.
with the ox.
Was he a thrown weapon user? I
Yeah,
don't think
we
so.
had a thrown weapon champion that might have been just a tad little bit evil, and then one of the other decisions we could have was bringing a champion who had an ox, and we picked.
Oh yeah, it was Duran.
Yeah, Duran. We loved it.
You gotta take Duran and his faithful yak Doran.
Yeah. Love them.
The only time I feel like buffing is much preferable as a spellcaster is in like the +4 fighters when chance of crit success goes crazy. I mean, yeah, you can do that and be super damage efficient that way too. But if you need your buff to play your playstyle, do that. There's just a lot of situations where it's not necessary. The game's math doesn't account for such things. So, you're going to get through that encounter anyway. Might as well have fun.
Yeah.
And, it's great when everyone bears the burden of teamwork as well. You're really, really good fighter who's got lots of good 2-hit or abilities, a really good crit monster or whatever. They can take like runes that give benefits on crit, like enemies become frightened 1 when you crit them, all that kind of stuff. You can build yourself up to help your team while still doing kind of selfish play styles. Like the Dread Striker, perfect example. Your whole thing, trip an enemy, demoralize, destroy them. Because they're at that -3 penalty. You're hitting like a bus, but your teammates are also hitting like a bus because they're at -3. So, and that's not a great thing about Pathfinder as well. Sometimes delaying your action, going at different times in the turn order, can also be really beneficial for your team. There's no point in being a setup character if you go right before the boss. So if you just go right after the boss, then you can set up, and then you have a whole round's worth of turns for your allies to get the benefits of your setup before the boss goes again. Mm-hmm. And that's fun. That's strategic.
Yeah, I'll say that's the cool thing about Pathfinder. I think just like Pathfinder makes setups fun. There's something about it where like hitting off like some chain combo stuff with your teammates feels really good in Pathfinder. Compare that to like some other games. I think a lot of it boils down to the 3-action system being a thing. Yeah. So it feels like you can do a setup thing and then something else that doesn't feel like your action's been wasted.
Yeah. Or it doesn't feel like your whole term is dedicated to setup.
Exactly, which is a thing other games have to deal with.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, Lancer, I don't think feels like that. I think you can do that in Lancer pretty effectively, but that's a war game. That's kind of just how it be when you play those type of games. You do some setup combos. That, and like you can come up with some goofy shit, like the team we faced with the one strategy being the dome locked with the Enkidu.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's cool combos. Then just hopefully someone doesn't ruin it by torching the Enkidu to death.
Yeah, well, he got really unlucky with one of his structures. It just blew up like 2 structure down or something. Yeah, very unfortunate.
Hurt. That ruined him. Like, Pathfinder just hits different when it comes to that.
Yeah, well, it's because Pathfinder is so well designed that not only are teamwork actions beneficial, but they're also kind of meta in a way, which is really good. And so when you can do all kinds of stuff like that, the game feels like you can take it in a lot of different ways. It depends on your GM giving you interesting situations to fight in, interesting territories, different kinds of terrains, different structures, different objectives in combat even, can make that all feel really, really good. And when it comes to Lancer, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff in Lancer, but Lancer, I feel, is not as balanced. It feels okay, but I feel like if we really broke it down, we probably could use some of the jankiness to our benefits. Mm-hmm. Also, like, in Lancer, it's kind of like a much more, like, each level is such a huge power jump for each character, and all the mechs do just such drastic things. Like, the Napoleon just becoming nigh invincible, that like everything is so dynamic just by what mechs are even on the battlefield.
That's just the nature of like that type of game building for combat. It's just everything has a role that you feel when they're there, which is, God, I'm so happy you went with the decision to make our final fight a bunch of actual other Lancers.
Yeah,
with mechs. It was so fun because of that. And it's just the Lancer combat of, like, I love Lancer because even when it doesn't feel, it's like mathematically not difficult, it still feels like we're fighting for our lives, even though we're objectively not.
Yeah.
It feels like it's such a good game.
It's a good game.
So good.
And Pathfinder can be like that too, even less so if, of course I've made the true crunchy combats that get you down to the wire, but you can make combats in Pathfinder that are also technically not difficult, but feel dangerous. Because you know what happens if you fail, which is the big thing, Something I will try to do more this next season is give you guys more encounters that are not as nail-biting.
Yeah, because like there's some fights that are like really fun because of it, but I'm definitely building my character for the chance that we have to fight the worm cultist command again. Because like
Yeah, who
I
knows?
want to have stuff that I can actually be useful against him.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I
I mean, it's
can, I
always
just
good to have diversity.
yeah. And it's the wake up call for that, where it's like you then realize, oh, all my shit's a reflex save. He's just gonna make everything, and then you're like, okay, but luckily Pathfinder has stuff where even if I fail, it still will go through. And then all the reflex spells that I did just like didn't have extra effects. Like, oh, okay. So just need to
Uh,
readdress stuff.
Nora with a very interesting comment, but I want to be a max strength sorcerer. So this is something I find super interesting. Oh, there it is. Uh, about Pathfinder that some people have issue with. Because Pathfinder does its boost system based on, what class you're playing, it is technically impossible for like a wizard or a sorcerer to get the max amount of strength in the game possible. Because their class boost is intelligence or charisma. And that legitimately upsets some people. And that's so that's also just a question of like, what do you want from your max strength sorcerer? Because the thing you could do very easily is play a fighter who takes sorcerer dedication feats, heck, even and another spellcasting dedication, and you can still get almost max level spellcasting with it. Mr. Rex had this in his video. He's like, you can't be a max strength wizard. You can't be a combat wizard. It's just like, okay, but what do you want from your combat wizard?
Yeah,
Like,
because like there's a difference between you can't and why would you? Because if you're just like you just want to be that with no actual tangible benefits, what's the point of that being a complaint?
yeah, it's just, I just want to be a full wizard, caster wizard, do nothing with my strength. I just want strength to be my highest stat.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could want that. I don't know why you would. In theory, having a character that's built around using their stuff, like the other part he wasn't a fan of, a barbarian with good healing.
Right. I mean, again, I addressed his video. I didn't address Mr. Rex necessarily, because there was the other videos he had when he was talking to Ronald, the rules lawyer, where he completely contradicts some of the points he makes. Like, he doesn't like the fact that you can be a pure medic barbarian if you wanted to, but he also is upset that you couldn't be a full martial wizard.
Yeah. I don't know. It was it's strange. But also not meaning to fully sit here and rehash that video.
Yeah, that video.
Yeah.
And to be fair,
So.
the thing about his cleric hitting just as often as the fighter, well, not maybe as a fighter, but like any other martial, you can do that in Pathfinder. It's possible. Heroism. Yeah. Heroism can actually bridge that gap, actually. Quite easily, to the point where you are hitting as efficiently, but because your strength isn't as high, you are not doing as much damage. Also, you don't get the same weapon specializations for damage, so you're also a little bit behind on that, which is exactly what he was asking for. But I will say, he was properly informed in his comments about how statuses and penalties are not included in the math necessarily.
I feel like it's just the thing that you have to kind of like bridge the gap of. Like, you have to learn that in Pathfinder and such, like, the classes with the same name in D&D aren't going to play the same. Because, like, I think Cleric in 5e is a real Swiss Army knife. Like, it can be kind of whatever you want it to be. Like, you can play a full DPS Cleric in that. You can do all these things, like, crazy things. And Cleric in Pathfinder just doesn't feel like that. It's different. It's the same thing with, like, my issue with Champion, because I want it to be a 5e Paladin, but that's not what historically a Paladin or Champion is in games. Like the paladin in 5e is an explosive DPS, kind of like burst DPS character. In most other games, it's like a support tank kind of deal. Maybe like
Yeah.
a tank with some DPS capabilities. It's you have to cross that line of like these aren't the exact same thing, and some better, some worse. I am happy that 5e monk is nothing like Pathfinder monk, because I think Pathfinder monk is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It
It's
gives
so
me
good.
exactly what I've always wanted with a monk, and what 5e had to give me by giving me unarmed attack module stuff for fighter.
That's your
You
war
wanna play a dude
priest
who punches you.
does get weapon or crit specialization, which is actually pretty
Yeah.
good.
If you want to play war priest.
But because they never actually get to mastery, they don't get the benefits of weapon specialization damage for when you hit mastery. And I don't even know if they actually get the higher level of weapon specialization.
It's like one of the classes I've looked like nothing into. Cleric's one of those where I'm just like, I don't really.
No,
I
they
have a
don't.
character now.
Reg Zero, what are you talking about? Bard can totally do other things.
We've had a fear bard, and that shit was terrifying for the enemies mainly.
Yeah, but like, especially with like the new warrior muse bard, you could be a full-on martial bard. Probably one of the best martial spellcasters in the game.
Oh shit! I didn't know about this.
And if you play, actually I have my notes here because I'm actually tomorrow's video is gonna be the bard bite-sized video. If you pick Enigma, you are a much more recall knowledge focused character, so getting information on characters and such like that. If you're a polymath, you're actually a higher skill focused bard, and also you get the ability to have extra or alter your I have it here, signature spells, making you much better as just a straight caster bard if that's what you want to go with. So it's not just a buff bot. Yeah, sure, it has some of the best buffing in the game, but nothing requires you to play like that. The game's meth doesn't require you to play like that if you don't want to. If you never use any of your composition cantrips, you're still a very interesting class, despite that. And I'm very interested, Andrew, in your Sakaran bagpiper. Yeah, my Piper concept would start as a warrior bard, but at second level pick up the Maestro Muse with the Multifarious, yeah. And you would be a competent martial caster bard. All I see in discussions, yeah. See, and that's the thing, right? You don't have to play like that because the game doesn't demand you to. So, is it... people who look at just optimal, that doesn't even take into consideration different types of combat encounters or like setups. So, don't let other people tell you how to play. And just because something is the most optimal does not mean that it needs to be done, because you can still beat the encounters anyway, just not doing that stuff. Optimal characters can beat encounters in Pathfinder. Even encounters of relatively the same level. The only time optimal characters can't do the same encounters is if those encounters are so like high level that you need to be optimal characters to actually take care of them. But with the standard like way they do encounter building in Pathfinder, nothing in it demands characters to build in any specific ways.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the very reason, that's the thing. That's the very reason why I made my first class video, because I felt like everyone got Bard wrong.
Yeah. And it's like I remember us talking about it before you made the video, because like yeah, it's extra fun being like, oh yeah, Bard's pretty cool, and then you're like, oh yeah, a lot of people think Bard sucks. You're like, what? And we just look at Suzanne's character.
Yeah.
Like, what part of that is bad? That's like such clutch in so many instances. Dirge of Doom slaps.
Dirge of Doom, and the best part about Dirge of Doom, it reduces enemy saves, so you can combo that with your spell casting, and actually,
I exploited that all the time. Lower that save, yeah. Make a reflex save, bozo. Have fun.
Yeah, well, what Rage Zero is talking about is Inspire Courage plus Dirge of Doom means everyone gets a point up, enemies get a point down. It's a huge point sway, but you can also just do nothing else besides Strider Strike. Which, I mean, you could do. You could be a combat bard who's just consistently buffing and debuffing, you know, buffing allies, debuffing enemies, and striking every round if you really want to. Yeah, people don't respect the fact that you're playing an RPG game where you get to make choices. Isn't that ridiculous? That people can't play a build they want to play because they think it's fun because it doesn't do optimal damage?
Excuse me, your original character, they got all this cool art for and stuff, like, not optimal. Please change your character for me.
To be fair, it could be done the opposite. Super lore-based players be like, your character doesn't make sense in the setting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
There's elitism on both sides.
There is.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, it doesn't even matter. Honestly, like, your character will just be a badass by grace of existing at high levels, you know? It doesn't matter what's optimal, because in that world, you're still the best bard in the world, even if you have a 0 bonus in your charisma, if you're level 15. You know? And again, the game is multifaceted. There's more than just combat. Your character can be incredibly successful with, like, mercantilism or politics or all kinds of different feats that can be accomplished outside of the game that can give you in-combat benefits even. Saying, you know, your character works really hard, becomes captain of the Night Guard, and suddenly gets, like, a troop of knights under them. That's a very different power get, you know? And that's not even written into the game's rules, mechanically speaking, but can be an event that actually happens in-game. A spell shot based on Ghost Rider sounds sick.
That does, actually.
With the skeleton ancestry, too. That's awesome. There's no point in medium armor. I don't want every single strength-based martial to take Sentinel, please and thank you. Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, it doesn't matter what armor you're wearing as long as you get your max dex cap up until plate mail. Plate mail is the only armor that actually, like, bypasses the math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember looking at that. Armor is so interesting in Pathfinder.
It's good.
It feels a lot more freeing than, say, 5e.
Oh yeah, you don't have to wait till level 10 to get plate armor. Yeah. Man, every paladin's, like, dream and when they start a game of D&D 5e, oh, I can't wait till I get plate mail.
It's so expensive.
It's so impossible to get. And, like, again, the math, like, unless having super high armor is the point of your character, there's no point in getting super high armor. Because, honestly, for most types of armor anyway, armor is just to negate crit chance more than it is to prevent being hit. But even, you know, even then, things like shields and all kinds of stuff can make the difference. If you're wielding a shield, a medium armor character has just as much AC, granted with an action cost, as a plate armor wielder.
It's God, sometimes. That's a fair point though. The whole thing with the people that are sitting there trying to get you to optimize a character that maybe you don't fully want to optimize. Like, you're fine. You can deal with weird setbacks. There also are on our camp people who like, my character doesn't fit in this setting because the lore goes against us. You can't take that action. You can't take that subclass because it's you're not in that location. And that stuff's weird.
I had a GM who could not understand why I never wore armor as a bard. I think I was a bard. Yeah, I was a bard. I was the Fey bard one. I can't remember in D&D. I never wore armor. He just wore fancy clothes. And he's like, you could wear light armor. It gives you at least one more AC. I was like, no, I don't want to. And he could not figure it out. And the funny thing was, I was in the middle of combat a lot, and I almost never was hit.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, is because a lot of the time he justified enemies not hitting my character because I just looked like some commoner or some like royal person, and there's armored people around. They're like, oh man, he's not probably gonna fuck us. So
I like that concept. I like the idea of just like you're about to swing at somebody, you're like, oh wait, that's a dude. 1 second, he's obviously unarmed, and then you play a song and like explode your brain.
Yeah. But yeah, the DM could not figure out for the life of him. He just like, why don't you wear armor? Why don't you can increase your AC by like 2 or 3 points or whatever. I was like, no, I don't want to. Couldn't get it. Couldn't understand. I never got hit though. I was never in trouble of dying, except for maybe I think one encounter. And you know, that was it. It's like games, especially if you have a GM who is not intentionally putting you through a meat grinder. Games do not require optimization or min-maxing.
Only times, like, even in, like, just in games, the only time where that would actually matter, like, really matter, is if you're intentionally going into, like, a high-scale, high-experience, like, game. Even, like, for video games and such. Like, unless you're playing at, like, max difficulty, going for, like, a record in something, speed run, you don't need everything to be perfectly optimized. It's fun to do that sometimes, but like it's not a necessity every single time you play.
Yeah,
you can just have fun with like picking a thing because you're like, aesthetically that's cool. You know, aesthetically I like the ghost. I'm gonna pick the ghost archetype. I know it's not very good, but I have fun with my character that's a ghost, and it's like, hell yeah, good for you.
I just want him to use guns, and I have to make a character who's from some obscure place or something. Yeah. Sometimes, again, like you can have elitism on both sides. It doesn't really matter. And Andrew, man, interesting characters today. Keep up the good work. I like your character ideas.
Yeah, they're very fun.
I just wanted to be a thaumaturge with a pistol. Yeah.
Simple things.
And that's the thing, right? Is, to be fair, it depends on the kind of game you're playing. If the whole thing is about like immersion and really living in the world, those kind of things can be important for the setting. If it's your standard game, it's not really that big a deal. You know, like a player playing a skeleton just because they want to. Like, that's not a normal thing. But hey, if you want to do that, go ahead. Hell, in our Monday game that my fiance is running, we have a taxman automaton who's a tax auditor for chiliacs. And he gets upset that people in different countries don't pay their taxes.
Yeah, character.
You know. So, whatever you do to have fun. I personally really enjoy making a character that feels like they fit in the setting in the world. But that doesn't again, I'm playing with someone who is playing an automaton, an incredibly rare group of people from a long dead nation who's at the very least, thousands of years old, who's a tax auditor for Chiliax, which is a Hellran nation. He also has an inflatable ass.
Important for a character to have, though.
Yeah. And he now has a tramp stamp of a big titty robot girl on his lower back.
Yeah.
He's also huge.
That part too. Robot puberty.
Or he's large. Yeah, robot puberty. So, it's like, yeah. And that's the great thing about tabletop is characters can just be blended into these weird groups that should never work, but somehow do anyway. Is it my preference? No. But I can still have fun. Yeah. And still enjoy my time. So,
as long as you enjoy yourself, that's all that matters.
Like, people are building their characters wrong. People are going to tell you that. People are gonna have just different ideas for their classes, or are going to do things that just like, why did you not just play this instead? It's just like, if you want to play a martial wizard, why not just play a magus? What were you trying to actually get out of it? There's all kinds of ways where in the end, it just matters that you're having fun, but also be open to let people help you out. If they're telling you just min-max on damage, yeah, you can probably ignore that. But if someone's like, hey, have you tried playing a multi-class archetype dedication from this class instead? Where you can still narratively be, like, again, a fighter who multi-class archetypes into wizard, it's like, yeah, you're mostly focused on using your weapon or whatever, but you can enhance yourself with spells, or you can use spells to, like, change situations. Like, if that's more what you want, mechanically feeling, narratively, you can justify whatever it is. You can be a fighter who is actually a wizard, narratively speaking.
Just add that fun roleplay flair. It's what I always do, and then don't have to do in Pathfinder, because it's finally a game where the shit I want to flavor my stuff as. I'm like, oh, this is my idea. It's like, oh, there's an archetype for that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a subclass for that. I'm like, oh, never mind. I'll just do that. And
exactly.
I love games that just kind of reward you for doing something you were already going to do.
Yeah, it's true. It already accounts for the kinds of things that you were going to do.
Like,
anyway.
Or in a few months, will account for the thing you homebrew in.
Yeah.
Which keeps happening to you.
Yeah. I gave my barbarian goblin their grandma ghost as a ghost companion, and then that came out in Book of the Dead like a few months later.
Yeah, it's repeatedly happened in our games. Like, hell yeah! Here's a cool thing I'm giving you, and there's rules for it already. All right, cool.
Yeah. So it's like it's no matter what anyone tells you, Pathfinder's math does not stop you from playing anything. The only one who is going to stop you from playing anything is your GM, giving you tons of encounters that is not appropriate for your group. Challenge rating speaking.
Yeah.
And that needs to be something you communicate to each other. Because legitimately, some people might not understand this. Players can enjoy themselves in games that have little to no difficulty, actually. Yes. Some players just want to come and have a good time, or come in and feel powerful in a game, Yeah,
I mean, there are people who they get their fun out of it, like myself. I mean, yeah, there's stuff that can ruin my fun sometimes, but like primarily, if I'm just at a table or in a call and we're all playing a game together, I'm just into it. God damn it. Again. Happens every stream now. Where I'm left unattended with the chat. Yeah, like for myself though, I'm pretty much of the opinion that I'm playing a game with my friends, and so I'm having fun with the game because my friends are there. So in the end, I'm very easy to please when it comes to like a tabletop game or system. We've played, I think, 1 or 2 weird systems where we're like, we're probably not going to retouch this. I still had fun in the game because at the end of the day, you're just hanging out with your buddies. And even the shittiest of games can become fun if you're, you know, enjoying it with friends. God, I hate being left with a chat like this. I don't do live stream for a reason. Thank God.
Based in glue build.
There it is.
One of your people, I see.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's because there's game aspect, right? It's just like, if you play League of Legends even, right? A game that's highly competitive, I guarantee, unless you're in the uppermost brackets of players, that you can play most champions and win still. Because character mastery means more than point mastery for a good majority of League games until you get to the very end. And
you just play Mordekaiser or Set and you're fine.
I do love Set.
I do like Set a lot.
Set's really cool.
Or
But
Spears.
and the best part about tabletop is it's not competitive. So you don't even have to ever build optimally unless your DM is demanding you do. The Scarlet Pimpernel, yes. I remember you were talking about that build a while ago on the Discord. And yeah, it's like my favorite character archetypes are characters that are dynamic and have the ability to handle a lot of situations with interesting use of skills and abilities rather than like, I hate min-max characters that can do everything, who are just like good at everything. It happens a lot in anime. But if I'm playing a character who's like, I have a lot of skills, I can do a lot of things, and I use like some of my like illusion spells to get through some situations, it's a lot more fun. I like sifting my way through encounters, finding out dynamic ways to handle new things, rather than like just being point-based good at things. Yeah, and the thing about Final Fantasy XIV as well, even the most difficult levels of content have been cleared by what has been viewed by the community as suboptimal teams.
Yep, I mean, that happens in any type of game, which is like the fun part. I mean, it happens all the time in 40k, where like a pretty shit faction will find a really weird thing and plays in a particular way that lets them win. Or say it's like Smash Melee, where the scene is pretty like established on what's good and bad, and then someone comes out the woodwork with like a mid-tier shit character and wins a tournament. With like those shakeups are so fun. But yeah, at the end of the day, like a lot of times some games have that mathematical like, this is objectively the best thing for this thing, but then someone could come around and just find a way to do it better.
As that guy who won that one, I think it was like Tekken or something tournament,
yes,
with
Tekken's
Panda.
Yes, because the meta character is Jin, and he didn't know how to play Jin. All he played was Panda, and so you just get good at playing. The Tekken scene is so interesting. I'm not gonna go on a rant on that because the Tekken esports scene is so fucking interesting with how insular it is. Oh God, I love esports.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with that statement. I do hate 14's over focus on like simplification, where a lot of the classes just they make them less complex to make them more balanced, or at least player fields to let anyone play everything. Sometimes you can have a character who just is very complicated to play, who isn't even better than anyone at anything.
You're just doing extra work.
You're just doing extra work, but that can be fun. That can be something that you like because it's more involved, you know? You can enjoy that level of like, I enjoy this because when I'm good at this thing, I feel like I'm really good at this thing because it requires certain kinds of skills.
It's I like that method of like I at least call it the 5e-ification of games when it happens, when they have the whole thing of we're gonna streamline and simplify everything. I mean, it's a thing that I'm worried about Warhammer, but so far it doesn't seem like they're going down that path. But
yeah, like, I'm still very interested to see what 10th edition brings.
Yeah, they've released more stat blocks, and it's really interesting. The big one is toughness is getting an entire overhaul, which is super cool. Like, they just released the Land Raider, the basic vehicle stat line, like one of the basic Space Marine vehicles. It's toughness 9, when standard toughness for tanks like that are T7.
Right.
Or the Orc Stompa, the giant fucking model, is toughness 14.
Holy shit.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, what? So strength and toughness is going to be a much more pivotal thing. And the stat lines are very streamlined. The only part I'm concerned about is how sub-factions are going to work, because it's done through detachments. You have your codex, and then you have a list of detachments that can be like lightly tied in with like some sub-factions who run those tactics. But it's primarily giving you bonuses for a certain method of play, rather than you're playing this sub-faction, you get these bonuses, and then you build what you want from that. I don't know how it's going to actually run. I'm worried that it's just going to feel bad, but we'll see.
We'll see. I'm excited, especially because I'm now going to actually start building my army this summer.
Dude, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you to get into T-Sons.
T-Sons. I've been wanting to for so long. I keep staring at my pieces like, should I do that today? But like, where do I put it? And I have to squeeze that onto the porch and spray everything down, and but now I'm gonna have like a big open space, and I'm gonna have tons of places to put my minis.
Yeah.
And I'm super stoked for T-Sons. So
yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I'm curious how they're going to approach the T-Sons like complexity in 10th, because I think it's going to be probably still have a lot of moving parts to it. I think it's just going to be easier to manage those moving parts. And
my theory is it's going to feel kind of bad in the beginning, but as they release more stuff, I think they'll add things that will fix some of the problems they are inherently making with some of the changes. That's my thought.
I think they said at launch every single army is going to have like, I think like 2 or 3, maybe like 4 detachments, like just starting out, and then they're going to add much more specific ones and like flavored ones as your codexes come out, because at the end of the day you have to sell codexes. But everything off rip is going to be very interesting and balanced. The thing that's actually going to be cool is the fact that now you don't need to manage like giant spell books. You just have like on your stat line the spells and like what they do, which is, I think, making Smite in the shooting phase and actually really cool. Like,
I agree. I think that's actually really good.
It just quickens it. There's so many times where your psychic phase is just like kind of pointless, and you're just casting it for certain benefits that happen later. Just cast it in the fight phase, cast it in the shooting phase.
But you know, Warhammer is a game where all the numbers kind of really mean something, because it is directly a player to player, but it's also like point to point almost system.
Yeah, everything is done through opportunity costs. It's like you have to like math out, like, I could take this model, it's 300 points, and then the way you have to look at it is, I need this model or this unit to take out more points than what I'm bringing it as. That's how you know something's worth. If you bring a model and it's like 45 points, say like a custodian, and it can take out more than 45 points of the enemy, that's a good unit. And then there's like averages. You can like average everything out like mathematically, to figure out that something is just objectively good for most of the time, then obviously there's outliers, but it still happens. Like the Voton are just objectively very good right now. Because even if I'm playing at my best, I'm gonna get fucking squashed because of just the rules you have.
Yeah.
It did happen to me last week.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
hurt.
And that's the thing, right? And that's the difference in tabletop. And the thing is, like, one of the biggest things I think people absolutely forget in tabletop, well, one is that stuff other than combat exists. Because, my God, does no one ever talk about, this character's not good at this, but they're really good at, this out of combat thing. It's always like, this class sucks. Because it just doesn't do as much damage as fighter.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay. It's like, again, something that I do understand, people being upset there's no blaster casters. Because for people who want to be a primary DPS blaster caster, that is not as viable currently.
No.
And it can't be changed really without honestly just making a whole other class. Because can you explain to a new player why Witch is bad? Kind of, yes, but Witch is also just not bad. The problem with Witch is, as an individual class, it's just Wizard, only it can take other traditions, and it offers nothing that Wizard can't do itself, if even a little better. Like, for Witch, for instance, your big thing is you start with a familiar, you have a familiar, and your familiar levels up with you. Well, Wizard with the familiar attunements, the study, or whatever it's called, gets the same thing. And then you pick your patron, which gives you a cantrip. It also determines what kind of spellcasting you do, and you get an additional spell added on. And Wizard gets a school, which not only gives them actually an extra spell slot over Witch in almost every way, but they also get a special focus spell. Granted, it's not cantrip, so they can't do it over and over and over again, but still. So it's like, all right, so mechanically, what does Witch have to offer that Wizard doesn't do, other than the fact that they can use other types of traditions? But, well, and the thing is, right, is actually, again, we just talked about this earlier, some of Witch's feats, like Eldritch Nails, Living Hair, not really good if you're not playing a martial style Witch. You can still play a martial style Witch and still be pretty much good, honestly. Granted, you probably should be either an occult or divine caster, but still, with things like heroism or bless, you can make up those differences. But what I like about Witch, and the reason why you would play a Witch over a Wizard, is talking about patron, right? Your patron and the lessons you can learn from your patron and your connection to that, narratively speaking, is huge. Your character has a really interesting narrative tie-in to a story that can be really, really fun. The Wizard is just looking into types of magic if they're in a particular school, which can be okay, but that's nothing compared to the fact that Witch gets their magic taught to them by some entity beyond normal understanding or comprehension. And so Witch, mechanically speaking, doesn't really set itself apart from other spellcasters enough to, like, warrant necessarily being a different class in a way. But when you take the narrative implications to it, and the fact that they do have mechanics tied to those narratives, the patrons and the themes that you learn, and the fact that the Witch has a kit designed more towards focusing on, like, sustained spellcasting versus, like, a Wizard that is kind of more generalized, Witch can even have mechanically played different spell casting. In fact, the witch I'm gonna play for when we play Kingmaker, I'm gonna play a Herald of the World Tree, where my character is kind of like an homage to Odin. He's a very unassuming kind of beggar-esque style character. He looks like he's injured, and he has a squirrel familiar, which is one of the kin of Ratatoskr, you know. And my beginning play style for the first few levels, I'm going to summon a creature, because summoning at low levels is actually really strong because the level gap is not nearly as big as it gets later. And then I'm going to next turn cackle, spend a focus point to sustain it for free, and summon another creature, and then spend a lot of my beginning combat with 2 summons, and then whatever extra action I have, which will probably be to raise shield, because I'm also taking the Viking free archetype, which allows me to get shield block. And I'll have equivalently 5 actions around, 2 per summon, maybe even 6 if I command my familiar to do something. And I'll be raising a shield, and if an enemy attacks me, I can shield block. And so I actually am quite tanky because of shield blocking. And eventually my character will get up to the point where he'll whisper magical words into his weapon, and I'll be fighting people with my spiritual weapon, which is just his weapon that he's enchanted to fight for him, essentially, mechanically speaking. And eventually I'll be able to summon a Valkyrie.
Hell yeah. That sounds like a sick character, dude.
It's a very sick idea for a character, a very fun character. And honestly, like my character could not be played as a wizard for at least like 6 levels. Like if a wizard wanted to get the same features, they couldn't pick up cackle until level 4 at minimum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I just get that right out the gate, and it's really easy. Cackle is such a good feat that you can pick up as a witch. And they have a lot of other really interesting interactions that you just don't see. Let's see. We are a little over time, but I'll try to address this the best I can. So yeah, the hair and nail feats are meh. Why would I even try to melee as a paper caster? Because you want to. Because there's lots of ways to get around it. Hell, the shield spell can negate a ton of damage for a single attack. So, I mean, and since combats last between 3 to 5 rounds, depending on when that attack hits, you could easily get through a lot of combats with just like using shield block from the shield spell once. Easy. And you get cool features. The fact that with Eldritch Nails you get a separate set of runes from your normal unarmed strikes means that just by having Eldritch Nails, you're wielding 2 unarmed weapons at the same time. Your normal attacks and your claw attacks, which is very cool and can allow you to get some very interesting rune setups. The hair is interesting because it can be a reach weapon, and it can also grapple. And again, people can just like the idea of it. Plus, you know, if you invest enough in like your con and things like that, you're good. And with such spells as like the Bless spell or Heroism, you can make up the differences in the proficiency gaps between you and other martials. So you can be just as good as another martial as a melee witch if you really wanted to. You do have to take precautions about, you know, dying because you have one of the lowest health pools in the game, but that's honestly not that hard unless you're going up against some seriously hard encounters. Also, why is there no blaster casters? So there's no blaster casters because there's no item bonus for using spell attacks. So inherently, math-wise, the casters are losing like 2 hit values to martials as you level up, and there's no way around it. because unlike status penalties and bonuses, item bonuses are included in the game's math. So not getting an item bonus to that is pretty devastating. Granted, this is for a reason. It's because no matter what you do as a caster, you also have some of the best ability to get around different encounters, like with spells. You have the best exploration capability in the game. You can do things outside of combat that marshals couldn't even dream of. It's just not possible. So they have to nerf blaster casters because there's no point in having a class that can do just as good DPS, single target DPS as a marshal, that can also just do a lot of other things way better than marshals. So do they hate blaster casters? No. And in fact, as people are already mentioning here, the kineticist is going to be the blaster caster. They're going to have a main focus blast range strike that you can do, plus the ability to get additional spell like features on top of that. So if you want like the blaster caster style, the kineticist will be a lot better tuned for that, while also not diminishing what other characters do by just being godly in exploration mode.
Yeah, those just like free casts essentially of spells is gonna be nuts. Where you can just do shit kind of for free. And the best part, I can't wait for all those moves with like the coolest names I've ever read to actually be good.
Yeah. So, they don't hate it. Paizo is kind of fixing it. Kineticist is something that people want, and it really fits that blaster aesthetic. And based on what elements you focus on, you're going to have abilities like flight or to use other kind of abilities much more frequently, which is going to be really, really cool. So if you like blaster casters, it's going to be the kineticist, because the whole point of the kineticist, and they've mentioned as much after the playtest as well, that they want them to have that blaster feel to it, but they don't want to create like a class that has infinite spellcasting that nerfs some of the casters' exploration abilities, for instance. So
I'm so curious to see. I'm so curious to see what it is after that playtest.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, everyone had some legitimate complaints after the playtest, and it's fair. Which was also kind of funky when it first was coming out, and it's now, like, I think a really good class.
Things should be funky in the playtest. The design is to figure out, like, to throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what actually works and what doesn't. That's the point of a playtest.
Exactly. So, it's a good game, and the things are designed the way they are because they cannot balance for player responsibility. You know what I mean? They can't allow a blaster caster play style because they can't like account for the fact that players would use that responsibly and wouldn't just make an omni character that's better than all other characters than everything else, Yeah, PaizoCon's gonna be very interesting, and Rage of Elements is coming out in July, I think. So we got a lot of stuff coming up, but unfortunately, we've gone over time today, so we're gonna have to say goodbye. But thank you all so much for being here. It was a very good video, or a very good conversation today. Honestly,
yeah.
A lot better considering the title I put up. So,
everyone here's very civil. You're doing this wrong, and everyone's like, let's talk about this.
Exactly, and for the most part, everyone seemed to agree. Having fun is important, and optimization isn't necessary. So there's just a lot of things that, like, the best part about tabletop is it doesn't have to be a hard experience to be very enjoyable. It can be fun just by merit of it's a narrative game. That's something you just don't get anywhere else. So it can be easier than other games and still be ridiculously fun because the whole point is you're writing a narrative, not that you're trying to beat the game. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's gonna be it for us. Glue Boy, anything you want? Any news or anything you want to leave us off with today?
If you are a fan of Warhammer 40k, go check out my channel. It's linked in Cam's YouTube, or just look up Glue Boy. I make stuff on 40k. I put out a video today on the best Xenos faction in the game, Necrons, the absolute coolest of the coolest. Yeah, if you're looking into getting into 10th edition Warhammer at any point, I'm going to be building up to that and going pretty deep once the game actually drops. So check my channel out. I think my videos are pretty fun. You might enjoy them.
All right. Tomorrow we're getting Bard bite-sized, which is gonna be great. And then this summer, be on the lookout for the channel because I am moving into a house next month, and we are setting up a large, like a week of a bunch of in-person stuff where we're gonna get a lot of the crew together for our Tuesday game and we're gonna do a bunch of in-person games. We're gonna probably do some tabletop, like board game stuff, and maybe some other kind of fun videos sometime in June or July. This is an apartment, not a house. We're actually getting our own home soon that will have, you know, more space overall. So yeah, it's very exciting. I'm very stoked for a lot that's coming up this summer. Things are still getting back, you know, it's been a hard year for me. I apologize for those people who have been looking out for my videos and haven't been finding them. It is what it is. Life's hard. You know, it's just about overcoming these challenges and trying to make, you know, keep our heads above water. And I keep saying this. I hope the videos become more consistent soon, because my god, the channel has been really hurting. So, you know, leave a like on this VOD or whatever, follow, subscribe, do all that. I know you guys have been doing plenty of that, following the Twitch and all that. I just want to say thank you. But for that, we're gonna say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.